Helping news in a high-profile investigation. 3 people are facing federal charges in the Nolan Wells case. They're charged with threatening a judge, a witness, and local officials in the investigation of his death. You'll remember Wells was found dead after a 4th of July boat trip with friends to an island off Mississippi's Gulf Coast. There's been a lot of questions raised about his death. Investigators say none of the 3 people charged know Wells or his family. An Illinois man is accused of threatening to kill a witness in the case and their family. A woman in Ohio is accused of making bomb threats against 2 county offices in Mississippi, and a California man is accused of sending a Facebook threat that a bomb would be mailed to the Chancery Court judge connected to this case. So far, no arrests or suspects have been named in Wells' death. An independent autopsy lists his cause of death as undetermined. Stefano.